I'm Chloe Lake, a Miss Universe Great Britain 2023 finalist, and this is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Hello, everyone. It's Adrian from the Pageant Project, and I just got distracted because I saw Chloe dart off camera whilst the intro was playing. Is everything okay?
Everything is all fine. I'm just trying to sort out my very clingy Pomeranian.
Oh dear. Well, Chloe, it has been a while. So, for those of you who don't know, I've known Chloe for, well, we interviewed 3 years ago, almost to the day, and I knew her before then. A lot has happened in the past 3 years, I'm going to assume. So we're going to catch up. But Chloe, first things first, how are you? Welcome back. Nice to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me again, Adrian. I actually can't believe that it has been 3 years, because I think the past 3 years have just gone by in the blink of an eye. But I'm good. I'm busy as ever. I think we said before we jumped on that some things changed, some things stayed the same. The fact that I am using 26 hours in the day when we only have 24, that hasn't changed. That is very much still the same.
Has the caffeine intake, because I was watching our previous interview and you were sort of in training to become a solicitor or a lawyer, and I've got to assume and I've seen bits and pieces, so forgive me if I'm messing things up, but I assume you're further along the track there. So just first question is, as you've gotten further along the track to becoming literally legally blonde or legally brunette in your case, has the caffeine intake upped?
Yeah, so what they don't tell you about law school is that you actually have special classes to increase your coffee intake. So when I go to uni and I actually study the areas of law, we have classes where it's okay, how much caffeine can you drink in half an hour? But no, I joke. Yes, I am. And I think our bodies are what, 70% water. I think mine's maybe 30% water, 40% caffeine. My job's very demanding. My life outside of my job is also very demanding. And I think if I didn't have coffee, I don't think I'd be able to function.
Well, then why the hell did you join a pageant? I mean, all due respect, Miss Universe GB is very well run. The director is awesome. And obviously, Miss Universe is the biggest, pageant in the world by a huge margin. But clearly, it's not like you have spare time. So, what are you doing?
I am planning my time more effectively than I have ever planned my time ever. Um, because I think because Miss Universe GB and Miss Universe, it's the big leagues.
Mm.
Everything that I do outside of pageantry is actually celebrated and encouraged within this pageant. And in my life plan, because I am one of these type A personalities, I do like to have a plan. Now was almost divine timing. I'm very, very close to finishing my master's degree. I'm in a fantastic place with my employer. I've just started my training contract, which means I am now officially training to be a qualified solicitor. And with that, I've kind of stepped up my voluntary work, not to kind of go into too much detail on what we'll talk about later on, but everything that I'm doing outside of work just seemed to point in the direction of, you know what, you're very much, going down the track of achieving this dream that you've had since you were 15, 16 years old. But there is another dream here. And I think for the past 3 years, maybe even 4 years, I've been in a little bit of a state of denial where I've said, oh, I don't want to compete anymore. I don't need to compete anymore. And whilst that's true, I absolutely don't need to compete. I think I would have been doing myself a disservice had I not entered Miss Universe Great Britain. And I think now, whilst I'm training, whilst I'm able to, still be learning on the job and learning what I want outside of work, it just seems like almost the right mechanism, the right wheel to be shaping me alongside that as well.
Well, as you said, divine timing. Now, I showed you this before we jumped on, but let me just quickly bring this up. So, for those of you who are playing the home game and you're listening to it, I'm now going to show Chloe a little bit. I don't know what part this is, by the way, but I'm going to show people a little bit of our previous interview, not to
To our
embarrass her, but
girls,
like
and they're freaking out, going, you know,
at,
interviews the biggest.
I'll mute it. At this time, if you're watching this, you see me, I'm actually in my car. And this is in June 2020 when the plague, or the pandemic was in about its third or fourth month, June 2020. I just got back from UK Galaxy. So that's why I'm in my car. I just want to so I can remember the exact point that this happened. And Chloe, I just want to ask you, do you remember who you were at this stage? And I ask that because you're a young woman who's achieving so much, and sometimes life is a blur. Can you remember who you were at this point, and perhaps how that person has changed over the last 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, personally, the growth journey that I've been on since we filmed that has been unlike anything I'd experienced prior to that point. And I think if there was one message that I could give to, 22-year-old Chloe, it would be start living your life on your terms now. Stop living for other people. Give in to your wildest dreams, because I could have been on this journey a couple of years ago prior to where I am now. And I think I going back to this kind of theme of things change and things stay the same, I think one thing that hasn't changed at all is that I love what I do. I love the fact that I get to use my gifts every single day to help people. And obviously I've developed as a lawyer, but within my role, I've also developed as a person. I'm able to approach people with more compassion and, understand that even in a world that's so kind of uptight, old white male grey suit typecasting as law, there is actually room for young brunette, bright pink blazer, Miss Universe Great Britain finalist Chloe. And I think I'm actually creating a space for myself and creating a space for younger lawyers to live outside of the law, to give into their ambitions and their dreams outside of our profession. And I think 22-year-old Chloe was too scared to do that. 25-year-old Chloe, yeah, she has the fear. I wouldn't say that I'm beyond reading unkind comments on some of the articles that have been written about me, but in the same token, I have to do it. I have to do it because ultimately, if people see me doing things that I want to do outside of a profession that says, no, you can't do that, then it'll encourage them to do the same. And then we'll become more diverse. Personally, I've spoken about this openly. I've been on a huge journey with my own mental health since that point. And I think a lot of us can relate, during those never ending months of the pandemic, all of our mental health took a hit. And if yours didn't, then that's fantastic. But I think the overwhelming majority of us, we really did suffer because it was unlike anything that we'd ever experienced. I was in the shielding category, so I literally could not leave my house. The rules to us were, if you want to feel nature, open a window. And those were the rules coming from the government at the time. And I think a number of, really quite awful personal circumstances then spiraled throughout that period. And it culminated in me in 2021 having what I used to refer to as a breakdown. But now I kind of see it a little bit more as a breakthrough, that, I had to hit that rock bottom. I had to go to a place that, I've never been before. I very much don't want to go back to. But ultimately, I then had to build myself back up from essentially nothing. So I think the girl in that interview, she didn't know it, but she was going to go through the hardest but yet most transformative period of her life. And actually, as horrible as it was and as challenging as it was, I'm grateful for it, because ultimately I'm sat here today at 6:30 in the morning, where in an hour I'm going to go to a job that I love, but also outside of that job, I'm just thriving. I'm not surviving anymore. And I think even going back to that interview, even at that point, I might have been just surviving.
I mean, you've always struck me as intelligent. I remember back to not struck me. You are intelligent. It's not like I have a biased opinion here, and I know that from if you remember back to the trivia nights where you answered all the questions correctly and single-handedly crushed the opposing team, and it was all fun and giggles. And then you guys in the UK really got hit with some very strict pandemic restrictions. Then, unfortunately, there were some things with the government where they showed they weren't living up to their own standards, which I thought was really abysmal and very dishonest. Um, but in terms of hitting rock bottom, and I feel I can resonate with you on this because I wrote my book and it was after I've been suicidal twice, and that was before the pandemic. And I found the pandemic very, very difficult in terms of being introspective, being intelligent, and you sat at home. And I didn't leave the house for like 3 months. And I remember the first time I went to the supermarket, it felt like a giant adventure, but it also felt very uncertain. So I don't need you to go into the details, but in terms of, okay, in pageantry, we're seen as role models. You're intelligent, you're well spoken, and there's this kind of this thing like, oh, I should have known better. Like I've given people this advice and I haven't taken it myself. Did you suffer from that as all at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think I was almost fighting an internal battle for a long time. So essentially, and this is something that I am happy to speak about openly because I think it is helpful. And if someone like me who is, is seen to be a high flyer, an ambitious person, a
Mm,
successful person, whatever success is to you, can speak about something so raw and something a little bit uncomfortable, then it might help someone else. So in early September 2021, I was diagnosed with depression. I was given antidepressants. And at that time, I remember calling my mum after I'd been to the doctors, and I said to her, I've failed. I've absolutely failed. I cannot
wow.
believe that this is happening to me. I can't believe
Mm,
that I can't fix this on my own. And I think that was the first step to me actually realizing that I'm not superhuman, but also that I don't have to be superhuman, that being me is way, way more than enough. Um, I don't know if you know very much, or if the viewers know very much about being on certain types of antidepressants, but the side effects are or can be quite severe if they don't necessarily agree with you. And also the dosage
yeah.
plays a very significant part in how you feel and how they help you. I was not on a strong enough dose. So ultimately, I didn't feel like I was getting better. And in fact, I got a lot worse. And
Mm,
about 4 weeks after that, I remember driving home from work and, trigger warning, I was just being plagued and plagued and plagued with these thoughts of, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. There is nothing for me.
mm,
And I kind of pulled up at home and I fell through the door and I just said to my mum, I was like, I need more help. I am not okay.
yeah.
I'm broken. And I think, again, if we go back to the first step, I thought that I was a failure. And I thought, there's so many people that look to me for advice, for guidance,
Yeah.
to follow in my footsteps, but they're not going to want to follow in these footsteps. I've let everyone down. I've let
Mm,
my friends down, my family down. I've let myself down. And then I actually think when I walked, when I kind of fell through that door in tears, I was obviously inconsolable because I couldn't unthink my thoughts. I couldn't get out of what I was
yeah.
thinking and what I was feeling because I was ill. I actually think saying to my mum on that day, I need help, was the
Mm,
strongest, the bravest, and the
yeah.
best thing that I have ever done for myself. And
Yeah.
actually, that wasn't me failing. That was me succeeding in recognizing that I had a problem. What I was doing to try and solve or help that problem at that time wasn't working. I needed something more. I needed more guidance. I needed more support. And actually, by being able to just blurt that out to someone that I love, to someone that I trust, that helped me get on the path to recovery. And now, 18 months later, because of that one moment, that was kind of my watershed moment. Those feelings are, yes, they're a distant memory, but that day isn't, because that day, the biggest show of strength that I've ever shown in my life.
Well, look, I completely agree with you. I don't see that as failing at all. I think the most difficult thing for type A or high achievers, whatever you call it, is to admit when they're not perfect and they
Yeah.
actually need help. And I don't know if other people can understand that, but I certainly do. It's admitting, like, because you feel finally you have to admit you're not enough and you can't beat the world. You are human as much as anyone else. And sometimes it's almost you're even more human than anyone else because you realize how deeply, in inverted commas, flawed that you are. But I mean, I've certainly looked, I mean, we've talked about interview, for example, and girls, you've helped them present themselves in the best way possible. So there obviously was maybe self-imposed or otherwise, but a pressure on yourself to present yourself as a leader, someone who's in control, someone's on top of things. Um, but the thing is, see, Chloe, I would still see you as that. I don't see the that day, that watershed moment, as going, well, now, no, no, don't go to Chloe because she's hopeless. Like, I almost see it as the opposite. See, I see it in a way that it strengthens how I perceive you because I can see actually she is human. She's not robotic. She's admitted that there are some things going on in her life that, I mean, do you really look back at it and go, like, I am not grateful? Are you grateful for it? I mean, I've been through my own moment, but I don't want to speak for you because it's deeply personal. Obviously, it was a traumatic moment, but looking back on it now, 18 months later, would you have had it any other way? Could you have had it any other way, being strong-headed, intelligent, and let's say a bit stubborn?
I don't think, do you know what? I think it was always inevitable, absolutely inevitable that it was going to happen. And speaking to my friends and my family, especially my mum, and even some of my close friends at work, that are able to be candid with me, they had all kind of said we were watching and waiting for this. It was always going to happen.
Right.
So I don't think it could have happened any other way. And actually, in a really weird way, and I hope people understand when I say this, I do have an immense amount of gratitude, not for feeling the way that I did, but how I dealt with that when I realized that I needed help, and when I actually stopped, I looked around, I appreciated the support that I have around me, and I recognized that I wasn't on my own. I don't actually have to do everything on my own. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to lean on other people, because ultimately we have to. I'm grateful for the lessons, and I think I always had to learn those lessons, because the job that I do, the life that I lead, I have to be able to cope with pressure. I have to be able to cope with stress. That's a non-negotiable. I have to do it. And at that time, I wasn't living my life on my terms. I was living my life for other people, to try and please other people. And now looking back, I couldn't think of anything worse than living life like that. And going back to what I said earlier, I was not thriving, I was surviving. And now it's the opposite. So I think I had to learn those lessons. So whilst I'm not grateful for the thoughts, I'm not grateful for, suffering so badly and so severely. It was something that was in my plan, and it had to happen.
Do you think now that you've been through that watershed moment? I mean, obviously, you've picked a career and you enjoy a career, which I think is very important to say, that you've picked a career that is not without stress, as you've already mentioned, long hours, and a lot of emotional, turmoil and grind. It's not an easy occupation, the legal occupation. But do you feel, just in terms of coping mechanisms, that the next time something, like, as one of my friends said, life wants to punch you in the face, and I think that's a very apt description. Next time life does want to punch you in the face, Do you feel that now you're better equipped to deal with it?
1 million billion gazillion %. So last year, I think, we'll say from January to August, whilst I was still, I was slowly coming out the other side. I was experiencing the light at the end of the tunnel, we'll say, to be cliche. Last summer, I actually published an article with the help of my firm in the Business Times newspaper. And it was an article geared towards junior lawyers, where I spoke about things that I had implemented and coping mechanisms that I was forced to kind of take and to use, because I think our profession is very, very black and white. You know, we talk a good talk about equality and diversity and having open and understanding working cultures. My firm is an anomaly in that we actually walk the walk. We don't just talk the talk, and that's why I'm still there. That's why part of the reason why I'm thriving. The profession as a whole is not the same. And I think that has to change. So having these conversations, talking about my coping mechanisms that I'm now well equipped to use to help other lawyers, other 21, 22-year-olds that are carving their way in the early steps of their career. And that's massively important to me. And I think I just want to share the message that if I can do it doing X, Y, Z and ABC, then actually if they go to their head of team and say, I'm struggling with my workload, is there anything that you can do to help me? Or if they go to a colleague and say, I'm really struggling to cope with studying and working at the same time, what did you do to cope with it? Do you have any tips, anything that I can do? Or even, how do you take a break? How do you take a break from a job and occupation where you're on all the time? That's something that I'm still learning to do, but I'm learning to do it with a lot more success than I was. So I think coping mechanisms, I'm definitely adopting a few now, and I'm sharing those as well with juniors within the profession to try and help people too.
I'm curious, what was the response like to your article? I've seen like you've been published, or there've been a few articles that you've published or someone has published about you. So, and I love that, because for me, pageantry is always about what you do in the other life, and then you bring it to pageantry. It's not about being a professional pageant girl all the time, pageant, 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 pageant. So what is the response in general been like to those articles and putting yourself out there with some firm opinions?
Genuinely, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I remember when the Law Society Gazette article came out. So in England and Wales, we have a law society and they have a publication, and it is the oldest publication of its kind. And usually it posts about salacious stories of solicitors getting struck off, big developments in the law. And there was me talking about being a Miss Universe Great Britain finalist. And when that article was published, I thought, oh my goodness, this is either going to go one way or it's going to go the other way. And the way that I was thinking was, I am going to get hounded by, and again, apologies if you fit in this bracket and it's not the way that you think, but older, male, predominantly white men in grey suits, unfriendly looking, thinking, well, she's an airhead, she can't succeed in our profession, she's bucking the trend a little bit too much. Absolutely not. And actually the exact opposite happened. So the article came out and I didn't know that it was published until one of my friends, who is a criminal defence trainee solicitor, sent it to me on Instagram, because the Gazette email all law firms, all solicitors in the country with the latest news. So on that day, thousands, tens of thousands of people got to see that article. And then my Instagram just blew up. And it was female lawyers from up and down the country that were following me. Women-led legal organisations from up and down the country were following me. I had women from firms that I don't know, I've never dealt with, sharing the story on LinkedIn. Women from my own firm were just being so encouraging, so celebratory of it. And I thought, this is what I want. This reaction I didn't expect, but this is what I want, and this is what as a profession we need. Because if this article has had such a positive reception, then this might encourage other young female lawyers to go into this profession and just embrace their femininity with every fibre of their being, which is what I do. And the chair of our board, who kind of pulled the trigger on the firm sponsoring me for Miss Universe Great Britain, we were at the Law Society Awards, where I actually won, which is very exciting. And he had said to me then, what's the response been like? Have you had any comments? And at that point, I hadn't seen any. And I just said, Kevin, this is really strange. It's just been so positive. But ultimately, that's what we wanted to achieve when we first spoke about the firm backing me for Miss Universe Great Britain. So it's worked out nicely, and long may it continue.
I'm really glad to hear that. At the same time, I'm a bit surprised because the people that you identified as the grey suits, let's call them, I've dealt with some of them before, and they're just genuinely very boring people that you don't want anything to do. But they're out there, and all love to them. Because you also mentioned that your firm is a bit of an anomaly in the field, and I'm curious, just from your experience, what is the difference, but particularly with men or with women, who view what you're doing in terms of being groundbreaking and celebrate it, but then there's the other part that look at it and judge it very critically. Is it a difference in upbringing? Is it a difference in schooling? Where is the difference? Because I got to imagine there are some people who will look at it, and let's take the ultimate example, like Miss Universe has a bikini section, a swimsuit section. And so there could be photos of you in a swimsuit, and people go, oh, airhead in a bikini, can't take her seriously, would never hire her. Let's hire an older white male because he's smarter, whatever, all that BS. But where do you think the difference is? Because I'm really glad, as I said, you got that positive response, but it's also slightly surprising.
I think, taking my firm as an example, I work with a lot of people from, let's say, non-traditional backgrounds, where a lot of the qualified lawyers at my firm haven't been to the best, we'll say, law schools, the Oxford, the Cambridge, the London School of Economics, to study law. They've been to non-Russell Group universities, the same as me. And I think perhaps that gives you, and those experiences give you, a better understanding, or at least a wider understanding of life outside of the boxes that I think society wants to put us in. I work with a lot of lawyers that, like myself, come from very normal, very working class backgrounds, and we're all products of what's called social mobility, which is this notion that you don't end up where society tells you that you should end up by means of, you come from a working class family, you come from a deprived area. That means you're never going to leave, you're never going to get out, you're going to do what generations and generations and generations before you have done. So I believe that I work with a lot of people that disrupt trends. And I think that's where this celebratory attitude comes from. That's where this encouragement comes from. I think perhaps, life in the city, where they do hire from certain universities, particular universities, they do hire people within really quite strict constraints. And I think you're always going to get a certain type of person, and people that are going to disrupt that are going to burst out of those boxes are few and far between. So I think it's just about an appreciation for life outside of what you know. And rather than recognizing that and going, ooh, and recoiling and thinking, well, that's not normal, we don't do that around here, going, well, okay, it's not something that I would do personally. It's not something that I feel the need to do personally, but I can see what good it does. I can see that this is a young woman, and with my, taking myself as an example, that outside of the office, I feel like it's an obligation, almost a duty, to go into schools, to go into universities, to speak to the next generation and encourage them. then we'll look at the charity work, which is everyone's favourite example. But I don't mean the charity work where you're fundraising just to score points. You're fundraising just because you want to do it. I mean the way that pageantry gives contestants a wheel, a mechanism to fundraise for causes that they actually care about, like myself with Mind. I think looking at my total now, I've raised, I mean, this year alone, £3,600. Over the years, we're probably talking closer to £5,000 for Mind, mental health charity. It's obvious why I care. You look at other people, Alicia Cowie, for example, that works with Papyrus, a great example of someone that's doing something because she cares. And whilst I firmly believe that she would be doing that anyway, just like myself with Mind, pageantry gives us a megaphone to really, really shout about that. And I think, you know, to all the people that have these kind of closed-minded opinions, I would like them to just be a bit silly for 30 seconds and think, take off the pinstripe suit, take off the straight jacket, and just think, actually, look at the good. Look at the good. And again, you know, positive breeds positive. And the more you look for good in things, the less you think, oh my goodness, this is a girl that's going to be a lawyer, that's going to be dealing with clients and their affairs. And she's posting photos in a swimsuit. Oh my goodness. That's 1% of what I do. That is so small and so insignificant. But then even if you take that example, the discipline that I show with my eating and my my working out is discipline that I apply in my job every single day. So I just think, get a bit silly. Think outside the box for a second. You might surprise yourself.
See, you say that, but then the strict definition of those grey suits is definitely in the box thinking. But I think it's fun to poke the bear at times, just because you know what the reaction's going to be. So might as well poke it. And I'm hopeful that that sort of school of thinking, the very closed-minded school of thinking, is on the way out, because it's going to be out of business soon.
Yeah.
The rate at which, I don't know exactly the legal profession, how fast things are changing, but the way the world's going at the moment, in 5 years, it's going to be unrecognizable. But tell me, you are obviously not blessed with an abundance of free time. So if in about a month's time, I think the Universe GB finals are, you have a certain crown placed on your head, what's Chloe Lake going to do with it?
Do you know what? Chloe Lake is going to continue to do what she has done for the past 12, 18, 24 months. And this is to continue to pave the way for other bright, hardworking, intelligent young kids. I just want to be an example of someone that has come from really, really humble beginnings, and that has gone, I have a dream, or in this case, I have two. And with the right hard work, attitude, and support, I've achieved those. Ultimately, anytime that I'm not in the office, if I'm kind of at work, you can guarantee that I'm in a school and I'm working with teenagers that don't have the career support, don't have the guidance that I also didn't really have when I was growing up. And I am that person. I am that guidance. I am that shining light. And I think to be a bit pageant patty now, Miss Universe, since Kuhn Anne took over, has said that they want a transformational leader. And I think leadership at its very core is someone that has gone along a certain path, got to a point of, you know, their definition, and certainly I guess other people's definition of success, and gone, okay, well, I've succeeded. How can I make it easier for other people to succeed too? How can I make my experiences worthwhile? How can I make it better? And how can I be a support to people that want what I have? You know, taking law as an example. And I don't just help young lawyers. I help young people that want to pursue careers in business, young people that want to pursue careers even in the healthcare sector, because I think the skills that I have, they're so transferable. But I think there's 10 12,000 law graduates in the UK every year, compared to maybe 2,000 training contracts. And in 2021, when I got offered my training contract, I was one of those 2,000 people, and I hadn't even finished my I hadn't even finished my undergraduate law degree at that point. I think I'm one of the only people in my firm's history that have been offered one so early in kind of the academic stages of their career. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to sit on my laurels here. I've got what I want. Now, how do I help other people get what they want? And I think Miss Universe Great Britain as an organisation, we pride ourselves on our message of not in vain. And I don't want my success and I don't want my journey to be in vain. And I think being selfish and thinking only for myself and only how I continue to succeed and I continue on the trajectory that I'm on, it would be in vain. So I'm going to do the opposite. And I'm going to continue to help kids, and I'm going to continue to make their journeys a little bit easier. I'm going to continue working with Mind, and I'm going to continue to try and encourage my sphere of influence to make an impact on mental health in their circles, on social mobility in their circles. But ultimately, that's going to happen whether I win or I don't. Obviously, I want to. But I think the beautiful and the most amazing thing, and the thing that I've enjoyed the most about Miss Universe Great Britain, is that it marries with this life that I've created so well that if on the Sunday morning I wake up and I haven't won, I'm going home to a life that I absolutely love and that I get so much fulfillment from. And I think that's really, really special. And that's a special mindset to be going into this competition with as well.
Are you as competitive as I remember, or has that changed?
Oh, always.
Of course.
Always. I mean, by definition,
Here we
doing
go.
the job that I do, I like to win. I work in transactional law, which means there's no winning and losing. We're all going for the same objective.
Yeah.
I still see it as like, right, okay, but I want to win. Yeah, I'm still competitive. And I think in this competition, you have to be. It's a mental game. And I was saying to Grace Levy, who I've had interview training with, and obviously Emma, I feel I've never approached a competition the way that I've approached Miss Universe Great Britain. And actually, I think because I've created and I've worked so hard on my mental health, and again, this goes back to the journey that I kind of had to go through. I've worked so hard to make my head a nicer place to be, that you know, the mind games and the competitive nature that kind of comes with this territory, it's not affecting me the way that it used to, and I'm still just getting the most satisfaction and the most enjoyment out of this whole journey.
Yeah, it's a good place to be when you can put the mind games in their, I think, proper perspective, and they just seem very, very small, and in some ways petty. But the biggest question, and I made a point to remember to ask you this: can you cook now?
No.
So that hasn't changed either.
I have an air fryer. So that does everything for me. I put my chicken and my broccoli and everything in the air fryer, and then 15 minutes later,
Whoa. You put your broccoli in an air fryer?
Yeah, like if I want a little bit of like crispiness, or like my sweet potatoes to make little sweet potato wedges, everything in the air fryer, and then I'll check on it in about 15 minutes. And if I get food poisoning, I get food poisoning. If I don't, I don't.
Can you please explain to me once and for all why someone as intelligent as yourself cannot cook to save her life?
So I say this, one of my colleagues at work, she joined the firm a couple of years ago and has become one of my closest friends outside of work. And she always says to me that I have so much intelligence. To be fair, my mum says this as well. But common sense is where sometimes I lack. And my response to that is, if I had intelligence and I also had common sense, and I guess we can add cooking to that, I would be frightening. I think I would be really, really scary. So
I think you're pretty scary as it is.
Life has to humble you, and it humbles me in the kitchen.
Did you, when I had Emma over here, I didn't realize how picky of an eater that she is. Have you noticed this? Have you ever tried cooking for Emma? Because when she was over here, I did cook for her, and there was like two foods she could eat. There was like chicken and sweet corn, and that was it. So my diet for 2 months was chicken and sweet corn. God forbid, have you ever tried cooking for that girl?
Yes, the last time Emma was here, so we've moved away from chicken and sweet corn, but
Wow.
this this is a sign of the truest friendship. So obviously we're both competing next month. We're both very much on that like healthy eating, working out. We're on that vibe. And I have a meal plan, and on that day my meal plan I think was chicken and loads of veg. Tender stem broccoli is my favorite. I didn't air fry it this time, I actually cooked it properly. And I didn't give either of us food poisoning, but I said to Em, I said, okay, do you want the broccoli? And she said yes, but I can't remember if she wanted the trees or the stems. But either way, I ended up cutting whichever way round it was, so that I had either the tree or the stem, and she had the bit that she wanted, even though tender stem broccoli is my most favorite kind of vegetable. And I just thought, this is actual like love. Like,
it is. It really is.
And then the next day we had bagels and scrambled eggs. So next time Em comes to Australia, you can cook broccoli, but only certain bits of the broccoli, and bagels and scrambled eggs.
No, I'm done. I'm going to eat whatever the hell I want. If that girl ever comes back to Australia, she's going to have to eat some fish. She's going to have to eat some prawns. She's going to have to embrace her fears.
But I'm the same. Like fish, no. Prawns, no. So I think Emma, do you know what? Emma and I are like, we are quite similar human beings. So I think I'm maybe only a teeny tiny bit more adventurous than she is when it comes to food.
I wonder if I could harness your competitive nature, though, maybe to further my own goals. Into like, I bet you can't eat this. Like, I'll give you £20 if you can stomach this. I reckon I could find a way. I don't know if Emma told you, but the very first meal when we met up, we went to a Chinese restaurant. And in Chinese restaurants, it's very different to Western restaurants. It's very normal to have a whole fish come out. And when I say whole fish, so you see the whole fish, so the head, the tail, the bones. And you have to have it deboned at your plate. And then I think it was a crab, and again, because it's a Chinese restaurant, literally crab in plate. And she was looking at that, and I remember the whole time she just sat there, couldn't eat a thing except the steamed white rice. And that was when I realized she might be in trouble, or I might be in trouble.
When we have takeaways, which at the moment is a distant memory, my mum really loves Chinese takeaway. And growing up, like my mum, my dad, and my brother, they would all have everything. I would just have chips and sweet and sour chicken.
Chips is not Chinese.
I'm so sorry.
Sweet and sour chicken is not Chinese either. It's literally the white pepper. Anyway, look, I'm glad you haven't poisoned anyone recently. I'm not surprised that you still can't cook, but hopefully we're trending up rather than trending down. Now, I'm just keeping an eye on the time because obviously you've got to get to work. What time is it for you now? It's cracked 7 a.m.
7:04, yeah.
Yeah. Just before we get to the final 10, I mean, I feel there's so many things that I want to ask you, but just before we get to the final 10, anyone that you want to give a shout out to?
Oh yeah, of course. So top of the list, and she's just come in, and Mum, I'm really sorry if I've woken you up before your alarm, is of course my mum, who is my number one supporter. And going back, as I've said, to that watershed moment, I actually, obviously we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our mums, but I would not be here if it wasn't for my mum. And then of course all of the girls, they know who they are, and that's the one thing that I think I get so much fulfillment from, is that I have the best support network ever, and there are too many to list. So when I eventually get married in many moons, I'm gonna have an absolute nightmare choosing bridesmaids, because I'm gonna need about 20. My mum, my friends, and my colleagues, I just love them all.
What's the if it's not impolite to ask, what's the name of the law firm you work at? Just want to give them a shout out.
Of course, Wilson Brown Solicitors. So for those of you watching in the UK, we are Midlands based, but we work all over the UK. And they are, of course, my sponsor for the Miss Universe Great Britain competition. And I think that is the biggest show of support and encouragement, you know, of me. They encourage me as a lawyer. They're training me. They believe in my capabilities, which is fantastic. But they also believe in me as a human being. And that's really special.
Well, you know, there's a saying, put your money where your mouth is. And obviously they're doing that. So I certainly can appreciate that and respect that. All right, let's blaze through these final 10, lawyer and interview expert that you are. And then we'll have you on your way to work. So question the first, what is your favorite word?
Yes.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
Wow, that was unexpected. In life, what gets you excited? What turns you on?
Helping people achieve their dreams.
And what turns you off?
People that put others in boxes and tell them that they can't be what they want to be or where they want to be.
Amen. What sound or noise do you love?
The boil of the kettle or the pouring of the coffee from the coffee machine.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Pippa's barking when I try to leave the house. She has separation anxiety, and as much as I love that she wants to be with me all the time, I also want to protect my eardrums.
If you could have any one superpower, what would you pick and why?
An extra hour in the day, because I already live like I have an extra hour in the day. So actually having that would be nice, and I could maybe spend that hour sleeping. So I don't need to cut down on that. Oh, here she is.
Hello, Pippa. What job other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Oh gosh. I always say if I wasn't a lawyer, I'd train to be a makeup artist, because I'd love to help people feel beautiful, their best selves.
What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
Ooh, I think working in finance. I'm not very good with numbers. I embrace that flaw. Hats off to anyone that can crunch numbers all day. Words are my thing, and that's why I'm in law.
And final question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You've made yourself proud.
Bonus final question.
Okay.
Are we wearing the pink blazer to work today?
Yeah, I think I will.
So if anyone from Chloe's law firm is watching this, she's wearing the pink blazer now. She doesn't show up to work in the pink blazer. Please let me know. I'm going to be very, very disappointed. But Chloe, look, I could talk to you for ages. It's been such a pleasure having you on, and I'm really glad to see that you've made it through and you seem to be doing really, really well. I don't know if it's appropriate to say I'm very proud of you, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me again. And you know what? It's just been lovely to reflect on where we were 3 years ago and the journeys that we've been on since. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity again. And thank you very much, Adrian.
Anytime. Always a pleasure. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching live on the replay, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Sorority Access is now open. So if you'd like to join an amazing group of women and learn how to be the most powerful, confident, and impactful queen possible, head to thepageantsorority.com. I'll see you there and see you in the next video.